moment I realized what was happening, I couldn't believe it. My best friend, the one I thought I could trust, had been trying to take my job, acting like she deserved it more than I did. I'd been working hard for months, putting in hours late into the night, making sure every project was flawless, and now she was stepping in as if it was hers to claim. I wasn't angry, though. I didn't raise my voice or cause a scene. I just smiled, looked her in the eye, and said, "Good luck with that." Little did she know, I wasn't about to let her steal what was rightfully mine. The very next day, she learned the hard way what happens when you try to take what isn't yours. My name is Lena Carter, and for the past 3 years, I had been working my way up at Harrison & Smith Consulting. I had fought for every opportunity and proven my worth time and time again. I thought I had earned the trust of my colleagues, especially Sophie, my close friend and co-worker. We'd spent years working together, sharing personal stories and celebrating victories in our careers. But little did I know, while I was busy focusing on my own work, Sophie was quietly plotting to take the very position I had worked so hard to secure. Before all of this unfolded, things seemed perfect. I had always been the one people turned to for advice, for support, and for leadership. I had a solid reputation in the office, and I had worked my way up from an entry-level position to a senior role on several major client projects. I was proud of how far I had come. Every project I led was a reflection of my dedication and my desire to excel. I wasn't just doing it for the recognition, though. It was my passion. I loved the work I did, and I loved knowing that I was contributing to something meaningful within the company. At the same time, I had also built a close friendship with Sophie. We had worked together for years, and we leaned on each other for support. We'd grab coffee together, talk about life outside of work, and even helped each other through difficult projects. I had always thought of her as someone I could trust, someone who would be happy for me when I achieved success. We had shared so many of our career milestones together, and I believed that she genuinely wanted the best for me. But things started to shift. It wasn't a sudden change, but over time, I began noticing small things that seemed off. Sophie, who used to be genuinely excited about the projects we worked on together, started pulling away. She became distant, more focused on her own tasks, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. It wasn't just the subtle change in her attitude. It was the way she began to speak about her career ambitions. She would say things like, "I think it's time I get more responsibility around here." I dismissed it at first, thinking it was just her usual way of expressing ambition. After all, we all wanted to move up in our careers. But deep down, I started feeling uneasy. Then came the project, the big one. It was the kind of project that could secure a promotion, the kind that would show the higher-ups that you had what it took to lead. I had been working on it for months, and everyone was noticing my contributions. I was ready to step up and take charge. I was confident that this was my chance to finally solidify my role in the company and position myself for the promotion I had been working toward for years. But then Sophie stepped in. It started with her volunteering to take on tasks that I had already been assigned. She would subtly suggest changes to my approach during meetings, offering her help with things that I was already perfectly capable of handling. I didn't think much of it at first, chalking it up to her trying to be involved. But as the project moved forward, it became more and more apparent that she was trying to take ownership of it. At first, I was confused. Sophie was supposed to be my teammate, not my competition. We were supposed to be collaborating, not fighting for the same spot. But I began to see that what Sophie wanted wasn't to collaborate at all. It was to undermine me. She started acting like the project was hers, pushing me aside in meetings, volunteering for decisions that I had already made, and talking to management as if she had been leading the entire project. It felt like a slow, quiet invasion into my space, and I couldn't figure out why she was doing it. I wanted to confront her, to ask why she was suddenly acting like my career was something she could take from me, but something held me back. I didn't want to appear insecure or petty. I was the leader of this project after all. I had earned the position, and I wasn't going to let her behavior take that away from me. But deep down, I knew I had to take action. I had worked too hard to let anyone, especially someone I thought of as a friend, steal what was rightfully mine. That was when I decided to handle it my way. I wasn't going to fight dirty, I wasn't going to engage in office drama, and I wasn't going to let Sophie's attempts at manipulation get to me. I knew that if I just kept my focus and continued doing my job with integrity, things would eventually fall into place. I smiled to myself and calmly responded when she tried to step on my toes in front of the team. I just said, "Good luck with that." The next day, Sophie learned exactly what happens when you try to take what isn't yours. The tension started to build gradually, almost imperceptibly, but once it hit its peak, everything changed. I had been suspicious of Sophie's intentions for a while, but it wasn't until a pivotal meeting that I realized just how far she was willing to go. It was the morning of the big presentation, the one I had spent weeks preparing for, the one that would decide who would get the promotion that everyone in the office had been talking about. I had worked late nights, refined every detail, and made sure everything was perfect. This project was my moment to shine, and I knew it. As I entered the conference room, I could feel the eyes of the team on me. I was ready, poised to present my ideas and lead the conversation. But Sophie wasn't far behind me. She'd been acting strange all week, and today was no different. She walked into the room with a confident air, but I could tell that something wasn't right. She'd started taking on tasks that were originally mine, offering her help in ways that seemed almost deliberate. She'd been dropping hints about her own ideas, overshadowing my work and making it seem like she'd been involved from the beginning, even though she hadn't. It felt like she was slowly trying to wedge herself into my role, making it clear to everyone that she wanted what I had earned. But she wasn't as subtle as she thought she was. As the meeting began, I could sense that something was off. Instead of being the leader of the presentation, I found myself stepping back, watching Sophie subtly take over. She started interjecting in the middle of my presentation, offering alternative ideas and approaches that made it seem like she was the one responsible for the project. She even made decisions on the fly without consulting me, something that had never happened before. I stayed calm, keeping my composure on the outside, but inside, I was fuming. I could feel my heart pounding as I watched Sophie step into my role, pretending as if she had been the driving force behind every decision. My colleagues, who had always respected my leadership, were now looking at her, nodding along with her ideas. The thought of her stealing my spotlight was infuriating, but I didn't want to cause a scene. I couldn't let her see how much she was affecting me. After the meeting, I pulled Sophie aside. I needed to understand what was going on, and I wasn't going to let her play this game any longer. "What was that, Sophie?" I asked, my voice calm but firm. "You completely overshadowed me in there. I'm leading this project, and I need you to respect that." Sophie's response wasn't what I expected. Instead of apologizing or acknowledging what she had done, she shrugged casually, almost as if she didn't care. "I just thought we could go in a different direction," she said. "I think my ideas are better suited for the next phase of the project." I was stunned. She wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. She was openly undermining me, as if she had a right to step into my shoes. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This was my moment. My project, my time to prove that I deserved the promotion, and there she was, trying to take it all from me without any regard for the hard work I had put in. I took a deep breath and reminded myself to stay calm. I had spent years building my reputation, and I wasn't about to let her ruin it. "Sophie, I've been working on this project for months, and I've put in everything I have. You can't just come in and try to take over because you think your ideas are better. That's not how this works." Sophie's smile faltered for a second, but she quickly recovered, brushing off my words with an indifferent wave. "I'm just trying to help, Lena," she said. "If you're feeling threatened, maybe you're not as confident as you think." That was the last straw. I had always prided myself on my ability to handle difficult situations with grace, but this was different. This wasn't about a disagreement over project details. This was about Sophie trying to take what was mine, trying to claim something I had worked tirelessly for. I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I stood up a little straighter, meeting her gaze directly. "Good luck with that, Sophie," I said, my voice steady. "But I'm not giving up my spot. You can't just walk in and take what you think you deserve. I've worked too hard for this." She stared at me, her face a mixture of surprise and frustration. But before she could respond, I turned and walked away. I wasn't going to waste any more time arguing. I had made my point. The next day, Sophie learned exactly what happens when you try to take what isn't yours. After our conversation, I knew I had to step up my game. I wasn't just fighting for a promotion, I was fighting for respect. I dove back into the project with even more energy, making sure that every decision, every detail was handled with precision. I made it clear to everyone around me, especially Carla, our boss, that I was the one who deserved to lead this team. I wasn't going to let anyone steal my place, not even Sophie. That same day, I received a call from Carla. She asked me to come into her office, and I knew something was about to change. As soon as I sat down, she looked at me with a serious expression. "Lena," Carla said, "I've noticed the hard work you've put into this project, and I've been impressed with how you've handled the challenges. You've really stepped up, and I think it's time we have a conversation about your future here at the company." My heart raced. I knew exactly where this was going. I had proven myself. Sophie's attempts to undermine me had only made me more determined to show that I was the right person for the job. The next day, Carla made the decision clear. The promotion was mine. And just like that, everything had changed. Sophie had tried to take what wasn't hers, but in the end, it was me who came out on top. I had earned my place, and no one could take that away from me. After our confrontation, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted between Sophie and me. What had once been a friendly rivalry had turned into something far more tense and personal. I had always known that Sophie was ambitious, but I had never imagined she would go to such lengths to try to take what I had worked for. I wasn't angry anymore, though, just resolute. I had made my decision, and I wasn't going to let her actions undermine everything I had built over the years. It was time to take action, and I knew exactly what I had to do. That night, I went home and reviewed everything once more. The project, the meetings, the decisions I had made, everything needed to be perfect. I wasn't just going to let Sophie's undermining behavior go unaddressed. I was going to make sure that I was irreplaceable, that I was so committed to this project and to the company that no one, not even Sophie, could take my place. The next morning, I woke up early and dove into the project work again. I organized my schedule, broke down the remaining tasks, and outlined a clear path forward. I spent the entire day focusing on the details, ensuring that every part of the presentation was ready for the upcoming board meeting. I wasn't just doing my part. I was going above and beyond to show everyone, especially Carla, that I was the leader of this project. I knew that it was crucial to show my commitment and dedication in ways that Sophie couldn't. I decided to focus on making my contributions visible to the people who mattered most: Carla, our senior managers, and even the rest of the team. This wasn't just about securing the promotion for myself anymore. It was about showing everyone that I was the one who could take the company to the next level. I also knew I couldn't let Sophie's behavior go unnoticed. I'd seen her trying to claim credit for ideas she hadn't come up with and taking the spotlight during meetings. Instead of confronting her directly, I chose a different approach, one that would allow my actions to speak louder than words. I started volunteering for more responsibilities, ensuring that I took the lead on the most important tasks. I started working more closely with the senior managers, asking them for feedback on the project's direction, and making sure they saw me as the driving force behind it. As the days went by, it became clear that Sophie's plan wasn't working. She had tried to insert herself into every aspect of the project, but her lack of experience and her tendency to step on others' toes were becoming more apparent. People began noticing how often she overpromised and underdelivered. I, on the other hand, had made sure every task I touched was executed with precision. I didn't need to tell anyone that I was the better candidate for the promotion. I simply let my work speak for itself. Then came the turning point. It happened during a team meeting, a few days before the final presentation. We were going over the last details of the project, and Sophie, as usual, tried to insert herself into the conversation. She began proposing a new strategy, one that wasn't well thought out and contradicted the work we had been doing. I knew this was the moment to step in. I couldn't let her continue to undermine my work and the direction of the project. When she finished speaking, I stood up and calmly addressed the team. I understand the desire for new ideas, but this approach won't work with the direction we've been taking. I've already ensured that our strategy aligns with the goals set out by the client, and I believe it's the best course of action. I didn't raise my voice, and I didn't belittle Sophie, but the authority in my voice was unmistakable. I knew I had to assert myself, but in a way that showed my professionalism and confidence. The room fell silent. No one spoke for a moment, and I could see the uncertainty in Sophie's eyes. She knew I had just taken control of the situation, and I could tell she was caught off guard. Carla, who had been quiet until then, finally spoke up. "Lena's right. The strategy she's proposing has already been vetted and aligns with the client's needs. Let's stick with it." That was it. Sophie's plan to undermine me had failed, and her credibility in the room had taken a hit. I could feel a wave of relief wash over me. The battle wasn't over, but I had just secured a small victory. My calm, confident handling of the situation had shown the team and Carla that I was the leader of this project, not Sophie. I didn't need to fight dirty or make her look bad. I just had to do my job better, and that was enough. The next day, the final presentation arrived. Sophie, despite her earlier attempts to take control, was nowhere near as prepared as I was. The board meeting was crucial, and I had meticulously crafted every slide, every detail, and every talking point. As I presented my ideas to the team, I could feel the weight of the moment. This was the culmination of everything I had worked for. This was my chance to prove that I deserved to lead, not just in the project, but in the company. Sophie, on the other hand, was visibly uncomfortable. She stuttered through her sections of the presentation, trying to claim credit for ideas that weren't hers, and attempting to pass off her lack of preparation as creative freedom. It was clear to everyone in the room that her attempts to claim the spotlight had backfired. The contrast between our performances couldn't have been more obvious. By the end of the meeting, Carla called me into her office. "Lena," she said, "I've been watching your work closely, and I'm impressed with your leadership and how you've handled this project. You've shown initiative, you've delivered results, and you've earned the promotion. We'd like to offer you the new role of Senior Project Manager." Sophie had tried to take what wasn't hers. She thought that by playing dirty, she could steal my position. But in the end, it was my hard work, my commitment, and my leadership that won out. I didn't need to compete with her. I just needed to stay focused and show my worth. And now, I had the promotion I had worked so hard for, proving that no one could take what was rightfully mine. The day after the presentation, everything felt different. There was a sense of finality in the air, like the weight of everything that had happened had settled into place. For a long time, I had been fighting for my spot, but now that it was confirmed, I realized how much this whole experience had changed me. What I had thought would be just a simple win for me, the promotion I had worked for, had turned into a much larger lesson about leadership, integrity, and resilience. I had learned so much about myself, and I had learned even more about the people around me. The first thing I noticed after the promotion was offered was how differently people started to treat me. There was a shift in the office, a subtle change in the way my colleagues interacted with me. They respected my confidence, my ability to handle pressure, and my dedication. But I also noticed something else. The way Sophie started to distance herself. After our confrontation in the meeting, it was clear she wasn't happy with how things had turned out, but she didn't exactly confront me about it either. Instead, she started avoiding eye contact, leaving me out of certain conversations, and even pulling away from our usual casual chats. It was as if the friendship we once had dissolved overnight. At first, it hurt. Sophie had been my friend, someone I confided in about everything, work, personal life, and dreams for the future. But now, the space between us felt like an ocean. There were moments when I wanted to reach out, to ask if we could go back to how things were before all this started. But I knew deep down that the dynamic had changed forever. She had chosen to compete with me, to undermine my efforts, and I had fought back. There was no going back to the old friendship. Instead of feeling guilty, though, I felt a sense of empowerment. I had stuck to my values. I hadn't sabotaged Sophie's chances or thrown her under the bus. I had simply done my job and made sure that my hard work spoke for itself. She had tried to take what wasn't hers, and she had learned the hard way that integrity and dedication always win in the end. I had proven that no one could take my place if I worked harder, stayed focused, and remained true to my principles. In the days that followed, I started receiving more responsibilities, more visibility, and more respect from my team. Carla, our boss, was the first to reach out to me after the promotion offer was made. She called me into her office to discuss next steps and to officially inform me of the new role. The conversation was everything I had hoped for. But there was one thing she said that stuck with me. "Lena," Carla said, "I've been watching how you've handled everything lately. You've shown true leadership, not just in the projects, but in how you've handled the competition. It's not just about being the best, it's about showing people how to lead with grace, even when things aren't going your way." That hit me hard. I had always prided myself on being good at my job, but I hadn't fully realized how much my actions outside of the work itself played into my success. It wasn't just about the tasks I completed, the deadlines I met, or the meetings I led. It was about how I carried myself in the face of adversity. I had been presented with a situation where I could have acted out of anger or frustration, but instead I chose to remain calm, to keep my focus on the bigger picture. And that was what set me apart. As the weeks went on, the tension between Sophie and me continued to grow. I had hoped that things would calm down, that we could both move past this awkward phase. But it became clear that wasn't going to happen. She was still trying to reclaim her sense of power and status at work, but I could tell that the rest of the team had lost some respect for her. The cracks in her performance that had been so obvious before only grew wider, and her confidence started to falter. She would often miss deadlines, make careless mistakes, or try to claim credit for ideas that weren't hers. It was as though she had been playing a game she wasn't prepared to win. I didn't want to relish in her struggles, but part of me felt a sense of vindication. Not because I wanted to see her fail, but because I had worked so hard to get where I was. And I knew that my success wasn't just luck or favoritism. It was earned. I had been steady, reliable, and competent, while Sophie's impulsiveness and desire to take shortcuts had caught up with her. Eventually, the fallout from Sophie's actions reached a boiling point. One afternoon, she asked to speak with me in private. The tension was thick in the air as we sat across from each other, the unspoken history between us hanging heavily in the room. She began by apologizing, but it wasn't the apology I had expected. "Lena, I realize now that I tried to take something that wasn't mine. I got caught up in my own ambition, and I lost sight of our friendship," Sophie said, her voice soft and regretful. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have done what I did, and I want to make it right." I listened quietly, but inside I was unsure of what to feel. Part of me wanted to forgive her, to return to the way things were before, but another part of me knew that the trust between us had been broken. I didn't say anything for a few moments, letting the silence fill the space. Finally, I spoke. "I appreciate your apology, Sophie, but the truth is, what you did hurt me. It changed how I saw you. I don't think we can go back to what we had." She nodded, her face falling with the weight of the realization. There was no anger in my voice, just the quiet understanding that some things can't be fixed, Our friendship had been tainted by her actions, and I had moved on from it. I had learned that sometimes the best way to deal with betrayal is to keep moving forward, to focus on your own growth, and not let someone else's actions define your worth. In the end, I realized that this experience wasn't just about a job or a promotion. It was about knowing my value, standing my ground, and not letting anyone take what I had earned. It was about understanding that success isn't just about achieving a goal. It's about how you carry yourself, how you rise above adversity, and how you remain true to who you are, even when others try to take what's yours. As the days passed and the dust from the conflict with Sophie settled, I found myself reflecting more and more on the entire experience. At first, I thought the promotion was the main goal. After all, that was what I had been working toward, fighting for even. But as I settled into my new role, I began to realize that the promotion was only a small part of what I had gained. The real reward was something deeper. It was about self-discovery, resilience, and the ability to maintain my integrity despite the challenges I faced. In the months following the promotion, I found a new sense of confidence. My role had expanded, and I was taking on more responsibility than ever before. But it wasn't just about the tasks or the title. It was about how I carried myself now. I no longer questioned whether I was good enough. I had proven that I was. Not only to Carla or the company, but to myself. What Sophie tried to do, undermine me, steal my position, was a wake-up call. At first, I was hurt by her actions, but over time, I realized that her attempts weren't a reflection of my inadequacy. They were a reflection of her own insecurity. She wasn't willing to put in the work, so she thought that by taking what was mine, she could shortcut her way to success. What she didn't understand was that success isn't just about being in the right place at the right time. It's about consistently doing the work, staying true to your values, and not stepping on others to get ahead. What I learned from this experience was invaluable. I learned that while it's important to be ambitious, it's even more important to be authentic. People will respect you not because of the position you hold, but because of the way you handle yourself, especially in moments of adversity. I had shown Sophie that by standing my ground with grace and professionalism, I could rise above petty drama and claim what was rightfully mine. The biggest lesson of all, though, was understanding the power of patience and timing. I had spent years quietly building my reputation, and when the opportunity finally arrived, I didn't have to force my way into it. I simply did what I had always done. I focused on doing the best work I could. When Sophie tried to rush her way into my spot, I didn't fight her aggressively or make a scene. I just kept working. I remained patient, and when the time came, it was clear who had earned the position. Of course, Sophie's apology came a few weeks later, but by that point, I had already made peace with everything that had happened. There was no need to carry the weight of the betrayal. I had let it go, but I also knew I couldn't go back to the way things were. I had learned that sometimes people are going to disappoint you, and the best thing you can do is to not let that define your path. I wasn't going to let her actions stop me from moving forward, and I certainly wasn't going to let her try to take what I had worked for. Looking back now, I can honestly say that I'm proud of how I handled the situation. I didn't let my emotions dictate my actions. I didn't let anger or frustration cloud my judgment. I stayed focused on my goals, and I took the high road. In the end, that was what made all the difference. I also realized that not everyone in your life will support you the way you expect. I had thought that Sophie, as my close friend, would always be my cheerleader. But sometimes the people closest to us aren't always the ones who truly have our back. That's why I've learned to rely on myself more than ever. I've learned to trust my own abilities, to stay grounded, and to not rely on others to define my worth. As I continued in my new role, I began mentoring other employees and guiding them the way I had once hoped Sophie would guide me. I wanted to show them that it wasn't about stealing someone else's position. It was about working hard, staying true to yourself, and being patient. It was important to me to pass on the lessons I had learned so they wouldn't make the same mistakes I had witnessed. In the end, I didn't just prove myself to the company, I proved it to myself. I had stood my ground when faced with betrayal, remained composed under pressure, and stayed true to my values. I had earned my promotion, not through manipulation, but through consistency, effort, and dedication. And that, I realized, was the greatest victory of all. As for Sophie, I hope she learned something from this experience too. Maybe someday she'll understand that ambition without integrity won't get you very far. But for me, this was a turning point, a moment where I learned that no one can take away what you've truly earned. The future was mine to shape, and I was ready to continue proving that I was worthy of everything I had worked for. And so, with the promotion now in hand and a renewed sense of confidence, I was ready for whatever came next, knowing that my success was built on the foundation of hard work, resilience, and integrity.